Welcome to EDC4000 Assignment 3. My name is Dijena Christidis. Today I'm going to discuss with you my social justice issue. How can we use children's literature effectively to promote children's understanding of themselves, others and their world? The contents that I will cover today are the key issues. I'm going to review the literature used as part of the action research cycle. The plan that I used or would like to implement, the critical analysis using the SWOT framework, and a personal reflection of the whole process of research that was used. Social justice. So what is social justice? Social justice is about the equality and fairness between human beings, and it works on the universal principles that guide people in knowing what is right and what is wrong. This is also about keeping a balance between groups of people in a society or a community. Social justice is an underlying principle for peaceful and prosperous coexistence within and amongst nations. We uphold the principles of social justice when we promote gender equality or the rights of Indigenous people and migrants, and we advance social justice when we remove barriers that people face because of gender, age, race, ethnicity, religion, culture or disability. Now, when I was researching the literature, I came across the social justice from the source of the United Nations, and I just thought this summed it up perfectly. How do you describe social justice? And I thought that this was just brilliant in being able to describe what it is. So as a result, I've used it today just to be able to demonstrate what I would believe is social justice. So why do we need to be mindful of social justice? So I link this actually back to the professional standards. As teachers, we need to be mindful that we are inclusive of all, and that we treat students in our class the same way without any prejudice. So we need to be able to ensure that we adhere to the law, and as teachers we uphold the Australian Teachers Standards, in particular the area of professional knowledge. Standard 1.3, students with diverse linguistic, cultural, religious and socio-economic backgrounds. So as teachers we must be able to demonstrate the knowledge of teaching strategies that are responsive to the learning strengths and needs of our students from diverse linguistic, cultural, religious and socio-economic backgrounds. So therefore we need to be able to ensure that socially our classroom operates fairly and that everyone comes through the classroom door is treated in the same way. The issue, or what is the issue? The issue that I've come across through literature is how can we actually use children's literature to promote children's understanding of themselves, the others and obviously the world around them. So this platform can become the catalyst for driving social justice and students' understanding of diversity, or if it's not invoked carefully, we need to make sure that it doesn't compromise social justice in the classroom. So the impact that social justice has to undertake my duties effectively was, say, if I was unable to select an appropriate text and I ended up compromising social justice in the classroom as the text was not inclusive of the diversity of the children in the classroom. So for example, although this particular text that I'm referring to is not a social justice text, but it's a text, nonetheless, that promotes mythological ideas and beliefs for analysis for students. But I have quite a bit of, quite a lot of students from Christian or different religious backgrounds that don't believe in mythology. So this may exclude these students from participating or engaging in the lesson. So therefore they're isolating these students and preventing them from learning. So again, I'm compromising the social justice in my classroom. The review of the literature. So I looked at the prevalence of using children's literature within school to promote social justice. The children that attend the school are predominantly from white Australian households, with only 13% of students that identify as Indigenous and 1% from a non-English speaking background. The index of community socio-educational advantage level of the school is below the average. The school is actually set in a regional country town where the set texts for the English units are predetermined by the head of curriculum at the school in alignment with the Australian curriculum. So the exposure to a wide variety of ethnicities in this particular regional town and school is not great. But I think through using children's literature, we'll be able to help the students develop the skills that they will need to be able to deal with diversity in the future. So students, I believe, come to your classroom with very different experiences and circumstances, yet all the students are expected to be able to transcend those differences, focus on the curriculum and meet the objectives established by our government. So to do this, however, students will need help, and teachers are faced with this challenging situation on a daily basis. So the experts believe that the issue can be solved through appropriate strategies, critical literacy, bibliotherapy, and through the promotion of values delivered in the framework of the pedagogy of multiliteracy. So these were the three key areas where I did a lot of research in. So with the critical thinking, in the text, the Addressing Social Justice in Teacher Education Through Children's Literacy, this particular paper explores some strategies that can be introduced to both pre-service and in-service teachers using the 4 dimensions of critical literacy as identified by Lewison, Flint and Van Sleers. So the first one is being able to disrupt the commonplace, so seeing the usual through new lenses. The second one is the interrogating multiple viewpoints, so seeing the world through other people's perspectives. The third point was the focus on the social and the political, so looking at the larger picture from personal to social and examining the relationship between language and power. And 4, taking action to promote social justice, so the actual steps that can be taken to exercise power to enhance everyday life. So looking at that, and then looking at bibliotherapy. So bibliotherapy is the strategy of turning to a book for help or to find an explanation. Thibault quotes Way 2's guidelines for selecting and using literature in the classroom. Now, 2 summarises the 5-step approach appropriate for a whole class discussion at any grade level, with emphasis that the book is not to be used as a substitute for a discussion, but rather to inspire a discussion amongst the children or the students. And then the steps, to be able to do that are to identify, so that's determine and discuss the problem, and it should be meaningful, interesting and appropriate for children. The second step is to brainstorm, and that encourages children to think about possible solutions, listen to and respect all of the ideas. So keep a record of the solutions suggested in case the children want to try more than one. The third one is to select, and that helps children examine the advantages and disadvantages of various solutions and then choose one of them that they believe may be workable. The fourth step is to explore and implement. So that allows children to gather the necessary materials and resources, and then if it's feasible, implement the solution that they select. And the last one, which is your evaluate. And that's with the children being able to observe and discuss whether the solution to the problem was successful, and if it was appropriate, help the children think of changes in the solution implemented, or encourage them to be able to go out and explore some new solutions. So this problem-solving technique provides the catalyst for discussion, which is essential in supporting students through traumatic events in their home or even in their school lives, through guided problem-solving, so students can build the capacity to solve problems on their own when they arise. The next one that I had a look at was the pedagogy of multiliteracies. So in a world of increasing technological change and cultural diversity, alternative ways of defining and doing literacy are viewed as essential for empowering students for academic, economic and personal success, in accordance with Luke and Freebody, Lancashire and Noble, and I think it's Unsworth, the last one. So to address this new literacy landscape and provide more socially just student opportunities which celebrate social cultural diversity, the New London Group designed a pedagogy of multiliteracies. This assumes that human knowledge is embedded in social, cultural and material contexts and developed collaboratively in a community of learners. So the New London Group argue that a pedagogy of multiliteracies integrates 4 key factors. Now, those 4 factors are situated practice, which includes learners' prior and present experiences in a community of learners. And those community of learners, is a combination of new or novice and obviously some experts in there, or people that have been around for a while. The overt instruction involves the teacher's or an expert's intervention to scaffold or support learning and increase the learner's consciousness about learning. So it's like planting the seed and guiding them along that way. The critical framing refers to the learners interpreting the historical, cultural, political and ideological context of learning. So this is the transformed practices, which moves into transformed practices, which includes the implementation of new understandings through reflective practices in other contexts. So this is being able to take that knowledge and use it across new situations. So some of the key features of the literature that I found was quite supportive, all 3 of them, for multicultural texts that support social justice issues. All support the notion that learning occurs within social, cultural contexts and diversity. And they need to include social justice issues in all planning, regardless of the framework used to plan the teaching and learning. So the strategies selected to use is, when you are planning lessons, ensure that I apply critical, or anyone applies the critical literacy practices as guided through by the theorists, to ensure that we are selecting the text that's appropriate to support social justice. Explore bibliotherapy practices when introducing texts that tackle relevant social justice issues that relate to the group of students. This builds on the literacy discussion groups. It's an open forum where children can have or hold open discussions about the issue. Although it's confronting, this kind of discussion can really open up some deep thinking processes, and students have that opportunity to engage in a topic that is very real to them. And how do they link back to the literature that's been reviewed? So this includes the framework from the appropriate pedagogy in the planning stage to ensure that we are supporting social justice. So I selected some of the strategies over others for this particular reason, and that is that they were social, cultural contexts and diversity are all supported by these strategies, as they take into consideration the need to integrate literacy and social justice within a framework to extend knowledge about teaching and learning literacy through the promotion of open discussion, both for students and for teachers. So the resources that I will need for this plan is obviously some multicultural texts with a variety of diverse topics and issues that students can actually learn about or extend their knowledge about. I can access these through professional learning communities and the school library that would be appropriate to the needs of the children and the topics that we would like to discuss. So the key personnel that can assist me in this, the head of curriculum, my own colleagues, the principal, my parents, the students in the class, and the wider community of the school. So the framework that I would require to undertake this plan would undertake, or the time frame is to undertake a controlled plan, a whole English unit. I mean, you can do it in any other unit, but a whole English unit that runs for approximately 5 weeks. Select the appropriate text and plan the unit in accordance with the most appropriate pedagogical framework. Hold open the discussion, allowing students to explore, share ideas and discuss the text. And then, of course, explore the bibliotherapy during the trial to assess its success. See how it works. Like I said, it can be confronting, but, it does encourage the deep thought processes. The upkeep, or the sustained ongoing upkeep that will be needed, is to be able to monitor and observe the changes in the students' awareness of themselves, the others and their world. And also just see how it allows the students to engage, research and evaluate the topics of interest to them, so that the learning is a true inquiry and allows the students to drive the change and continuum of this learning. To evaluate the success of the plan would be to consider the success when the discussion and research evolves and begins to be driven by the students, where the teacher just steers the lesson and scaffolds the learning after increasing the students' consciousness, carefully guiding the sequence so that the students are able to transfer their knowledge across to the new situations. Also evaluate by students' view changes and see how they take on their awareness of social justice for themselves, others, and of course the issues in their world. Now, during this research, I actually conducted a critical analysis, and I used the SWOT framework to be able to do that. So the strengths that I found in achieving the objective, or what was helpful, was to be able to use a variety of different pedagogy, including multi-literacies and critical literacies that supported a social, cultural and social diversity. Being able to explore a new strategy of bibliotherapy that could be used to help with the discussion and give it some real meaning and depth. I also found that it can evolve so that it becomes student-centred, and it promotes multicultural text, which promotes social justice through children's literature. It also helps learners with their critical thinking processes. Some of the weaknesses, though, is there may be a risk of selecting unsuitable text, the risk of unsuitable topics not related to the group of students, or a risk of disengagement if deep discussion does not become apparent. With the external origin, I looked at the opportunities. So students can become engaged and feel empowered by an extension of that discussion. They can become more aware of themselves and their world and the outside world. Their acceptance of diversity and the need for social justice. The threat of this, though, is that learning doesn't evolve to be student-driven and it remains controlled by the teacher, and that can often happen where the inquiry just doesn't get there, or the discussion does not extend beyond text and doesn't stimulate any deep thinking processes. So in my personal reflection, I found that the action research cycle to be quite a useful framework in developing my plan. It guided me through the inquiry to pursue an outcome on an issue that could be faced in any classroom, using the literature to be able to identify an issue assisted in helping me make a choice about the topic. I wanted to do more research for my own personal knowledge. How can we use children's literature effectively to promote children's understanding of themselves, others and their world? So opening up children's worlds to learning of diversity and social justice promotes the understanding and acceptance. So reviewing the literature and the theorist strategies and perspective of multicultural text and using these texts in teaching and learning has provided me with an understanding of good practices that could enable this learning to occur. The literature tells us that reflective practice is critical to the success of improving teaching and learning practices. Reflective practice is fundamentally about creating improvements in educational practice and the social relationships that underlie those practices. Therefore, as a beginner teacher, as I want to improve and get a better understanding of teaching and learning practices, reflective practice should play a fundamental role